So we were in a situation in which capital was hunting investments. Myself, during the 25, 30 the years that I spent in the international bandwagon, now clearly when we are in a time when the investment is not hunting the capital, but when the capital is hunting investments, we are in very dangerous times. This is what we've gone through for several years in a row. Due to the savings were far above the investments, this capital chasing investment, chasing for yields, that was such that little by little we saw these spreads decrease considerably. The volatility on financial markets diminished as well. Insurance premiums were down as well by a great margin. And so, as we could see, that underpricing, that underassessment of the price of the risk developed. Another reason might be not only the savings glut reason that was very much highlighted, but not obviously in the explosion of credit derivatives that I mentioned. I see the fact that the financial market was able to spread out the risk on a very broad scale to look for buyers, risk buyers. Therefore, new risk buyers turned up. The offer and demand law played. The risk was priced. I also note, obviously, not only the fact that there is a great diversification of risks because of these credit derivatives that I just mentioned, but also, and this had a role on the way the risk quantity was appreciated as well as the price of risk. What happened is the explosion of this category of institution at high financial leverage. Institutions which were unregulated, unlisted, therefore outside of these regulations mechanisms. Institutions that were multiplied by a factor of 10 in size in capitals under management in these institutions. All in all, and I'll conclude my diagnostic. Now, besides these fundamental phenomena that were identified, once again, I insist, identified and published by central banks included, we must note a great increase of leverage in international finance, a great complexification with more and more complex relations within the financial system itself. And as well, we have to note, which is well known nowadays, that we have to note that the fact that financial players themselves had incentives that turned out to be very noxious when it came to appreciating the payment, the remuneration, based on the immediate risks taken without taking the long-term risks into account. Second line of comment, crisis management. I'm going to be very brief now. We are in the midst of crisis management. Actions count now. You know the decisions that we're taking these days. Now, to give you, as a player of the crisis, as a president of the European Central Bank, I'll just remind to you that we had diagnosed as early as August 9th, 2007, that something major was happening that shouldn't be underestimated. In international financing, we intervened August 9th after a discussion, in-depth discussion within the directory of the European Central Bank to make sure that the market was stabilized. The market was totally overwhelmed by the beginning of these turbulent periods. We had loaned 95 billion euros over 24 hours later for the in the entire Eurozone. I remind that to you because this was already a visible decision that shortly thereafter was completely validated by reality, whereas initially it appeared as oversized and exaggerated. But after 8 days, all players involved, all observators involved saw that we were right, that we were clear-sighted. To give you another order of size, January 2007, the governor of the European Central Bank decided to issue a loan of 349 billion euros, 15 days, due 15 days, meaning a little more than $500 billion at the time we had taken the decisions, which give you an idea of the decisions we have to take during these difficult times. This is what the European Central Bank did. I could go much more into detail about all the decisions that were taken, the transformation we conducted on our own financial banks, refinancing systems with more 3-month or 6-month term refinancing. As of today, this afternoon, we've just decided that the refinancing window at 6 months of the euro system was brought from 25 billion euros to 50 billion euros to give more long-time leeway to the financing for all of our commercial banks. One word about international cooperation. It is extremely intense right now. We have extremely tight relations, very trustful relations with all European international central banks. I insist on that, especially with the Federal Reserve. Nowadays, we are working, we have a cooperation on swap agreements for an amount of $240 billion, which allows us to feed in dollar cash from on this side of the Atlantic, our own banks. We are providing cash to them not only in euros but also in dollars based on a remarkable and unknown agreement, and so far original agreement. It's a first of this kind on the the world financial scene. We're at a point right now in which, as I said publicly, we do everything we can, European Central Bank, the other international central banks, to make sure that the market remains afloat financially in very demanding circumstances. We are limited, however, in what we can do. We cannot intervene when there are solvency problems, when we are beyond cash problems, which led me, in the name of the Governor's Council of the European Central Bank during these latest weeks, which led me to say to governments that at a certain point it would be good that all authorities would be up to their responsibilities, public authorities as well as all the players in the markets. It's a very strong message that I'm sending. This is demanding times that we're going through. All players, all authorities so far on this side of the Atlantic were up to their responsibility, but now, more than ever, we need to strengthen this and make this message more audible than ever. This morning and yesterday I took part in the Eurogroup meeting. Then I took part in the ECOFIN meeting. The 15, soon to be 16, and then 27 countries. A text was drafted by the Ministers of Finances, which sums up the present consensus for everything that pertains to the actions undertaken by public authorities, actions that include direct interventions of taxpayers themselves. It is important that all European governments can have a joint voice, a joint doctrine, joint principles for everything that is a guarantee and possible capital interventions. The state of this consensus nowadays crystallized in a text that was just drafted today. We are all together writing the history of this crisis management as I speak.